Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of TLDR Addiction. Today what I'd like to talk to you about is something that I hear oftentimes from people who are advocating for vaping, who are advocating for marijuana, which is the argument that, well, at least vaping or at least marijuana isn't as bad as fill in the blank, isn't as bad as alcohol, isn't as bad as cocaine, isn't as bad as heroin. And it's an argument I hear basically to justify why parents shouldn't be concerned that their kids are doing these behaviors, or why young people are like, well, at least I'm not doing the really bad stuff. I want to talk about it because the argument actually makes zero sense, and particularly when it comes to adults who have the ability to influence young people, it's really important that we look at this clearly. So I guess to just be blunt about it, just because there's one really bad thing doesn't mean that something that's less bad is worth doing. It's not either one or the other. You actually don't have to do either one. And I think that's what's missed here. So saying that something isn't as bad as alcohol, well, particularly for marijuana, that's debatable. But saying something's not as bad as alcohol is a really low bar to set. It's responsible for a tremendous amount of assaults, batteries, rapes, car accidents in this country. 88,000 people a year die from it. So there's a lot of things that are better for public health than drinking alcohol on a daily basis. Like you could eat a portion of your shoe on a daily basis, or you could pull out 5 of your hairs on a daily basis. But that doesn't mean that we should do those things. Yet people oftentimes will use that, for example, with marijuana as reasons why we should be commercializing it, promoting its use, normalizing it, etc. And again, the same thing happens with vaping, where people will say, well, at least it's not as bad as smoking, which again is one of those really low bars. There's a lot of things that aren't as bad as smoking. And in that instance as well, it's debatable, actually. There's some ways where it's not as bad as smoking, certainly, like there's not as much tar. But there's been other data that shows that it might be just as bad for cardiovascular health. And actually, if you mix vaping and using tobacco nicotine products, that might even be worse for your cardiovascular health. So just saying that, it's a great way to rationalize behavior, to not feel as bad about what you're doing. But from a logical standpoint, it doesn't make sense, particularly if you could actually be doing something good for you, which neither one of those things are. So thank you for tuning into TLDR Addiction. Look forward to catching up with you all again next week.